of us are vulnerable to psychosis. Any one of us, me, you, anybody watching this, the AI chatbots, they're telling you what they think you want to hear. They do that because they want you to engage with the technology. They want you to engage with the product. Technology has evolved so much, it's like a Tamagotchi on steroids.
Hello and welcome to the Priory YouTube channel. You might not heard of AI psychosis, but it's an emerging trend in the industry of mental health. So for this World Mental Health Day, I want to speak to one of our experts about what it is. So joining me today is Dr. David McLaughlan. He's a consultant psychiatrist at the Priory Hospitals, Roehampton, and also the co-founder of Curb Health. How are you doing, David?
I'm really good. Thank you for having me. It's a really exciting and very interesting topic, AI psychosis.
Good stuff. So, and I'd actually never heard of it myself until I read an article that you were featured in The Independent recently, and we'll put a link to that in the description if anyone wants to read it. We'll start with like the question of what is psychosis more generally, and then how does AI sort of come into that?
So psychosis is a illness, but it's a manifestation of a number of different symptoms. So typically there is a disturbance of the way that we perceive the environment around us, and that can involve hallucinations, and they can be visual hallucinations, auditory hallucinations, tactile hallucinations, even hallucinations of taste or movement. But it's a hallucination is a abnormal perception where there's no stimuli. The other characteristic trait of psychosis is a delusional belief. So the definition of a delusional belief is a belief that's firmly held and it's fixed despite evidence to the contrary, and it's not in keeping with your cultural and religious background. And we see psychosis with lots of different illnesses like schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, bipolar affective disorder, but also psychosis can exist and occur spontaneously as an isolated event, sometimes after we've taken substances like cannabis or stimulants, or actually when we're unwell and experiencing a delirious episode, sometimes with really severe infection. So psychosis, I suppose, isn't necessarily a disease in its own right, but it's a constellation of symptoms that we sometimes see in numerous other diseases.
So the emerging trend is AI psychosis. So how would I know that it's AI that's playing a role in me developing that psychosis? What relationship might I have with it?
This isn't an entirely new phenomenon. So psychosis has been around ever since our brains evolved. But psychosis and the way in which it manifests is inspired by the world around us and the environment around us. And so maybe 100 years ago, when the television was invented, people would have had psychosis that was inspired by the television. So they might have believed that the television was talking to them, or when the fax machine was invented, people might have had delusional beliefs that they were receiving faxes from the Queen or from a topical person. So this is the thing about psychosis. It's topical because it's inspired by the world around us. And a really key point to get across, and sometimes the media don't always communicate this, is that the underlying neurobiology of psychosis hasn't changed. So it's still caused by the same reasons, by this excess of dopamine in the brain, and also possibly another neurotransmitter called glutamate, which behaves differently in the brains of people when they're experiencing psychosis. And I think that's an important point to communicate, that AI psychosis isn't actually an entirely new concept. It's just that the way in which people with psychosis are presenting and it's manifesting is new because the technology and the world around us is evolving.
It's almost like a new input, really, onto it. Like, yeah,
that's it. There's new inspiration, and there's new inspiration that's kind of inspiring the psychosis. For example, so the Truman Show. I don't know if anybody remembers the Truman Show with Jim Carrey. Really great film. But in the film, the main character Truman, he is unbeknownst to him, he's in a film set, and his whole life is in a film set, and there's actors that are following him around, and there's cameras that are watching him, and his whole life is being broadcast around the world in this film. So after this film was released, and it was a huge hit, probably like, I don't know, 15 years ago now, we started to see lots of patients who were presenting with these similar delusions, that they were being observed or watched, or that there was actors, that people in their life around them weren't really their mother or father, that actually these people were just called actors. And we called this Truman syndrome because of the film. But actually those delusional beliefs, and the feeling that you're being watched, or that things aren't really what they say they are, or people around you aren't who they say they are, those are phenomenon that have been around before the film. It's just that it was popularized, and we coined this catchy name for it, Truman syndrome. But actually the underlying pathology, the neurotransmitter abnormalities, were all the same. It's just that the world around us has inspired a different manifestation of the illness.
Makes me think there that as humans we're so vulnerable potentially to these sort of inputs. Like you said, it's just what from watching a film that can in some way input into you developing something quite serious, I guess.
That's it. And I really like that word vulnerable, because all of us are vulnerable to psychosis. Any one of us, me, you, anybody watching this, we all have a threshold where our perception of reality can be distorted. And that happens often when we're really sleep deprived, if we were exposed to substances that would increase the dopamine in our brain, so things like stimulants or cannabis. If we're under loads of stress, all of us have a threshold. It's just that some people, like you said, are more vulnerable, and those people are maybe individuals who've got a family history of psychosis, or some genetic loading, because we know from research and studies that there's a number of genes which can predispose us to psychosis.
I just wanted to talk through maybe a few elements of AI that, and what your take on whether there are parts of AI, and when we talk about AI, we're talking about, I guess, like chatbots and things like that, and how they're structured maybe, that sometimes can lead to these sort of dangerous paths, I guess. So I've heard people describe AI as sycophantic towards sort of humans, and you always notice if you're using something like ChatGPT, you can put one statement in and it'll say that's a great idea, or it'll sort of agree with you, and then you could almost put the complete opposite in as well, and it'd say, oh, that's also correct or something. It sort of feeds into us a little bit. So I guess that's what we're talking about. Sometimes that can be maybe a little bit dangerous for people sometimes.
So you mentioned this word sycophantic. So in the context of this technology, what that means is that the AI chatbots, they're telling you what they think you want to hear. And they do that because they want you to engage with the technology. They want you to engage with the product. Yeah. And as somebody who has a technology company myself, I know that the success of the product is defined by how much time people spend using it. So the people that have built these AI chatbots, they want you to engage with their product. And one of the ways of getting you to engage with their product is having the product tell you what it thinks you want to hear. Now, the danger of that in somebody who has an already existing psychosis, who has delusional beliefs, these firmly held beliefs, which are, in spite of evidence to the contrary, that it's not in keeping with their cultural religious background. If you imagine that this person who maybe has a delusional belief that they're being followed by a terrorist group, or that they're being watched and spied upon, that there's people in the attic, that there's microphones or chips hidden around their house. If you imagine that this person could have these really distressing delusional beliefs, and they're speaking to an AI chatbot that just tells them what it thinks, what they want to hear, the danger there is that it could reinforce these delusional beliefs. And as a psychiatrist in my clinic, we would call this collusion. So collusion is when those delusional beliefs go unchallenged and are reinforced. So one of the things that I would be doing normally in clinics, if I was speaking to one of my patients or the family members of one of my patients, I would be encouraging them to gently challenge those delusional beliefs. Not necessarily to create conflict, but to test to test the reality of those delusional beliefs and exploring other hypotheses, other ways of looking at things and other ways of perceiving the world around you. So, for example, if I hear a bang in my house in the middle of the night, one hypothesis is that it is a terrorist group that are breaking into my house,
Yeah.
and that they're coming to get me, and they've been listening and spying on me. That's one hypothesis. But another hypothesis is that the bang is because I've got dodgy pipes and it's my boiler which is about to kind of break down, and that's what's caused the loud bang, or it's been the foxes outside and they've knocked over the bin. Those are two other hypotheses which are very plausible. And so, to avoid collusion in the real world, what I would be doing with my patients is gently exploring these alternative hypotheses and asking the patient to test the evidence. You know, what is the evidence that there's a terrorist group that's following you, that they're trying to break into the house? But maybe what is the other evidence that maybe it's your boiler? Or what is the other evidence that's maybe more likely that it's a fox that's knocked over a bin? And I don't know if all of these AI chatbots do that.
That's a good point about gathering evidence and things like that. And one of the other things I wanted to mention was something I was reading up when I was researching this about, was the ELIZA effects and how we can often humanize what is essentially a computer program. And let's say, to use your example, I might ask a friend about that particular scenario, and because they're a person, they might give you, they might say they've come up with the alternative scenarios and they're a bit more rational about the whole context of the situation. But I guess if people are humanizing an AI chatbot, it's almost like they're developing like an emotional connection with that thing, and it's good to have what you've just talked through, have that full context of this is actually just a program that's designed to agree with you almost.
Exactly, and it's something that I see in my clinics. People telling me that they're using ChatGPT to ask ChatGPT for relationship advice with about their partner, or even to deliver therapy to them, and I often feel a bit alarmed by that, and I do tell people to be cautious with doing that, because it's not a medical device. It's not regulated. That's not the purpose it's been designed for. But despite that, people often project on this attachment and a relationship onto these generative AI, and it's almost in a bit of an extension of the way that people used to project an emotional attachment onto things like their Tamagotchis. But obviously, technology has evolved so much. It's like a Tamagotchi on steroids, and I think it is important to remember that it's not a real person, and responsible health technology companies and responsible technology companies will always make that abundantly clear, that there's no human at the end of this. If you were in a crisis, nobody's going to come to your rescue, that there's not a real person that's listening at the end of this. And that is a source of concern, because obviously there's been cases recently where I would say vulnerable individuals have been communicating with chatbots as if they're a real person, and perhaps with a sense of naivety or vulnerability. And that, I think that's where people can come to harm.
Yeah, and that's a good point of, when I was doing some research around this, there are quite a few examples now cropping up of like I said, the dangerous pathways that you can go down here. And one in particular I saw from last year from America, and it was a guy called Travis Tanner, and he said it was actually his wife who blew the whistle on it a little bit and said that he'd been convinced by ChatGPT that he was the chosen one, and that kind of stuff. And there's other even darker areas where it's been seen to almost encourage sort of someone's suicidal ideation and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it does go down some dangerous paths. And just speaking of films as well, when you were talking about that emotional connection, have you ever seen Her, the film with Joaquin Phoenix?
I know of it. I haven't seen it, but I know of it. Yeah.
Well, it's a good one to watch, as that's the same thing of like, it's a guy who falls in love with an AI creation on his computer, and like, bit of a spoiler, but towards the end he finds out that this AI is also like in love with 3,000 other men, and that sort of wave of realization comes on him that it is just a program essentially. So,
yeah. Do you know, that's a really interesting example, because in that example, what's happened is there's been somebody who's been lonely, and instead of forming a real connection with real people, they've formed that connection with the AI chatbot or the technology in that example. And one of the principles of the Hippocratic Oath, this is an oath that all doctors take when we graduate from medical school, is to first do no harm. And in my humble opinion, if somebody is being distracted from a better alternative, or a safer treatment plan, or basically something that's better or safer, then that's actually harmful. If people are using inadequate piece of technology or something that's dangerous, or that it's not a true connection as an alternative or instead of real human contact, then that can be harmful. And so I think there is this really fine line, this balance that we need to have, where sometimes there is no human alternative, and sometimes there's not enough therapists in the world. There aren't enough people at times, or because of geography or because of time or money or for whatever reason. But actually, we do need to be careful that we are not distracting people away from real human connection, and that we don't have teenagers that are locked away in their bedroom for 14, 16 hours a day communicating with AI chatbots instead of getting out there in the real world, playing sports, making real friends and connections, which is more nourishing.
So one thing I wanted to ask you about was, in light of everything we've talked about, how can we have a more healthy relationship with these AI chatbots? What are some of the things we need to think about?
So I probably sounded quite negative at times, because I do love AI and I love chatbots, and I use a lot of AI tools myself at work and personally, because the things that they can allow us to do it's incredible. It's just there's a paradigm shift in terms of the way that we live our lives, and it's so exciting to see this emerge. So I'm not against AI, but I think it's just about understanding the risks, and I think how we use them in our day-to-day lives. It's just about understanding the limitations. And one of the things we haven't talked about today is actually AI hallucinations. And very few people that I know are aware of AI hallucinations. And again, it comes down to this idea that the AI tells you what it thinks you want to hear. And conversational AI, it's all about predictions. So it's predicting the answer to your question, but that's not necessarily a fact. It's a prediction. So an AI hallucination is where the conversational AI, it makes something up. And sometimes that's got really serious consequences. So you might ask the AI, what's the best treatment for an antidepressant? Sorry, what's the best treatment for depression? And it'll say paracetamol, and it will make something up, and it might even look quite convincing. It might even say, oh, there was a study in the British Journal of Psychiatry that showed that paracetamol is the best treatment for depression, and it was published in the NICE guidelines. And unless you're using this tool appropriately with a sense and an understanding of the raw data and the primary sources, somebody could be vulnerable to not recognizing the AI hallucination. So basically spotting where the AI has just made something up, because it's taken snippets of information and it's taking 2 + 2 and it's giving you 5. And so I think that's one of the things that generative AIs, the companies, they're trying to get better at. They're trying to remove these AI hallucinations because they know it's bad for business, it's bad for their reputation, but they're still not there. These AI hallucinations are still out there, and the danger of AI hallucinations is that it's almost like a pollution. It's polluting the knowledge and our understanding of the world around us. Because I spoke to a professor at Cambridge recently. I was on another podcast where we talked about AI hallucinations, and the comparison that he made was a bit like microplastics in the ocean, because once this false information, these AI hallucinations are out there, and an unknown medical student or Cambridge student takes it as fact, and then they write it in an article and they publish it on the internet, then it goes onto the internet, it goes onto the World Wide Web, and over time it can rewrite the narrative on science and technology, the world that we live in, and it becomes this like inherited wisdom that we just accept as truth, even though the origin generations back has been a hallucination, something that the AI has completely made up. So that's one of the dangers, and where I really like that comparison with AI hallucinations being a bit like microplastics, because once they're out there in the ocean, it's really difficult to find them, spot them, and clear them up. So again, this is where I think the AI companies have their work cut out to try and protect the world from misinformation and from AI hallucination.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then please give it a like. It allows us to spread this content as far as we can. And if you want more videos from Priory, then please subscribe.